Boom. And we live. What's up, soldier sister? How you feeling today?
What's up, warrior? I'm well. Thank you
You
very
don't know?
much. What about you?
I'm good. I'm
Woo!
good. I'm good. I'm just
I, I'm glad to
trying to
hear that.
stay cool. It's hot out here.
Yes, hot out here too.
Yeah. So, but I typically stay cool. So, you put a little water in this thing so it can get cool. So,
All right. All
all
right.
right. So today's gonna be a hot one. I know I say that all the time, and they typically are hot. This one's gonna be fire because we're probably gonna make a lot of folks angry because we're gonna go contrary to what uh, the consensus is amongst 40 and over folks. The consensus is, every time you turn around, when something is wrong, the first thing people say is, oh, this new generation, these younger generations, these young people. And I'm looking at these folks like, didn't you get enough of that shit when you were a kid? Didn't you get enough of being blamed for stuff simply because of your age? How did we, our generation, and that's a little bit before and a little bit after us, how do we get to the point where we just say, you know what, we're going to start saying that stupid shit? We didn't like it when we were young, but we're going to say it now that we're old. And here's the thing, I first noticed it and started getting irritated by it a few years ago. But the thing that really stood out for me was when Monique went on this rant about women wearing flip flops and bonnets in public places like to the airport. And the responses were, well, these young people, these young people, these young people. And I'm like, the people I see with it, some young, but I see some old 40s and 50s chicks with that. And I see that with everything that's being blamed on the so-called new generation or young generation. So, so this show, which is, was your idea, uh, resonated with me, Denise, because it is not just the the older generation that's really kind of leading younger people, but it's really the elite that's either leading bad behavior or leading because they've or leading in our descent to hell because they've abandoned us. They've abandoned everything. They've abandoned everything in there, and they're basically saying, grab as much money as you can on the way out the door. Don't bother to lock the door, or turn out the lights. And today I'm going to indict everyone. I'm going to indict the church, which has abandoned us, no longer leading us. I'm going to indict the Alphabet Organization, the Negroes Alliance for the Appeasement of Caucasian People. I'm going to indict the National Useless League. I'm going to indict the Congressional Black Cocksuckers. I'm trying to be good, so I didn't know how to do that word. I'm just gonna have to say it. That's what they are. And fraternities and sororities, Jack and Jill. Like, we don't really have people out there doing it like they used to. So, I know my frat brothers get mad and say, well, we're still doing some things. Yeah, we are, but not like we used to. There's really no, what do I want to say? No real bastion of leadership from yesterday, um, that we can point to. Preston James, what's up, big brother? There's no bastion of leadership to point to, and I think that's the problem. And so before somebody that I'm really angry and frustrated with, I'm gonna let you speak, Denise, and then I'm gonna tear somebody's whole mouth out the frame. You're on mute, Denise. You're still on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so there's quite a bit that's packaged in what you just said. So, where do I start? Well, um, I think one of the things that's really important for us to consider, with this discussion about, all those young people and everything is exactly what you said is every generation is has that or has heard that or um, is told that. Um, and then also conversely, young people look at um, the generations before them, as if, they're outdated or even like, why haven't you fixed this mess by now? And it is,
Yeah,
it's quite the conundrum because as a collective, all of us are tired of what we see going on in our communities, what it means to be Black in America, having to deal with that because when we think about it, uh, the physical shackles are gone, but we still very much are an oppressed people. But one
indeed.
of the things that I find very interesting about this conversation, though, sort of blaming young people. Well, there are a couple of things that I find interesting about it. One is what you were talking about with this sort of abandoning young people, and I understand the frustration that so many of us have in our community and the things that we see and the things that we see happening. So for instance, I know in Chicago, you and I talked about this. You got young people who are just out there at this point just stealing people's dogs as they're walking them. And so someone like my aunt, from her generation, she's afraid. And so
Yeah.
we have these things that are happening that we can't ignore. But I think where we go wrong in abandoning young people is one, forgetting that we're the ones who parented them.
How about that?
Okay, so let's talk about that. If our young people are out here, acting like they haven't been raised, is probably because they haven't been.
They haven't been right.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So then, so you're holding them accountable for not being raised. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the other thing is, and this is probably more theoretical than making sort of like that direct connection. But when you look at um, like who, this idea of who do we deal with first, or putting our energies into, well, we gotta, we've got to, sort of excise, some group or some people, and we're looking at young people like, they're the throwaways. that's that's not even where I would begin. And I've said this, we have a whole population of Black elite. Um, and that does not necessarily equate with money, although it absolutely can.
Sure.
So I'm not saying that just because you got some Black folks out here who are well off, excuse me, I'm sorry, well off, or that they're educated, that that's who what I'm talking about. Now I'm talking about Black folks who have decided that, as you said earlier, they were going to secure the bag, and they were going to do so at the expense of the rest of us.
That's
And
right.
and they know who they are.
Yeah.
They know who they are, and we know who they are. We know that they're all up in these institutions. As you said, they're in government. I'm not sure how you can continue to be a body of representatives, and you can't pass anything that benefits Black people. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Why are you convening? Like, I just go and just go collect your paycheck, but don't try
Get
to
your
fool us.
paycheck,
Right.
right?
Just get
Go
your
away.
paycheck. But don't try to make the rest of us believe that there is something really happening, because if it is, we can't see it, and all of us can't be blind.
Well, if
So,
we're going to talk about politicians, let's name some names. Because right now we have Negroes who are mayors of number one and three largest cities in America.
mhm,
And they're both in derelict of duty, just clowning specifically where immigrants are concerned. I think that a lot of African Americans are concerned about resources that are going to immigrants that could come to us,
mhm,
specifically because the immigrant focus is on anyone who is not black. And that's a
mhm,
problem. So you've got in Chicago this goofball who showed a lot of promise, who decided he's going to take structures in the black community and use them for immigrants when they're in the black community. And I'm upset because they're going to use my old high school. That's a problem. The
I have to say, I
boneheaded,
was very surprised by, because I agree with you. Showing a lot of promise. I thought that there would be a lot of excitement, but I think that the idea of going into Black communities and using those resources is, I'm not sure
for
how you can
others.
justify that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so the goofball in New York wants to actually give people a check. He wants people to personally open their homes to immigrants, and then you'll get a check for it. And I'm like, so can I open my home for my cousin from Nigeria and get a check, or just these people south of the border? And so these are black mayors who are doing this. And I always go back to when I first noticed that politicians were really, I mean, I always knew they were problematic, but when I noticed that they had just abdicated was with, and I know people love her, Maxine Waters, when she showed us who she was. Black people really loved Obama before we knew he was a hoax, and and she basically told people when he was running, she said, "I know my constituency wants me to support Obama, but Hillary's my friend, so I'm going to support her." And I thought to myself, "Well, then quit your goddamn job." Because your job is to represent the people who elected you, not because someone is your friend. And if that's what you're doing, then you're not our friend. You don't represent us. You're just doing some stuff. So I wanted to call out those. And then just in general, the way Negroes in the Democratic Party have been trying to just browbeat and shame black folks for Damon Hunter. What's up, brother? For not wanting to jump up and down with a skirt on to cheer for the Democrats. I'm like, that's a problem. And it's a problem for a number of reasons because this isn't about let's go vote for the Republicans. If they've got something for us, we should do it and talk to
Mhm,
them. But that's not what this is about. What this is about is benign neglect, where they say, "Oh, we need you. Don't do this," because that's going to hurt you. Support us, and we've got you. But we continue to get nothing. We get heaping helpings of nothing, and then we still get, yeah, but you've got to support the Democratic Party. And I think that's playing out for a lot of people. I know it's played out for me. Both parties uh, can go and do some things that are. I'm trying to be good, Denise.
I see. Baby steps, huh? Baby steps.
Baby steps. Baby steps. Yeah, both parties are really doing nothing for us, and I don't want what Obama told us we were going to get. Well, the rising tide floats all boats. Yeah, but we've got a hole in our boat, punk.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
fix
true.
that hole at
Yeah.
least. Don't say what they won't let you do. Let's fix that hole. because and they let you do a lot for the LGBT community. And so I'm just saying that these black politicians are joining in with others who are just basically saying, look, black people, just relax. Because Joe Biden said it out of his damn mouth. He was like, vote for me or you ain't black and I'll talk to you later. I mean, people can be upset by Ice Cube all they want. Oh, he's a rapper, he's a rapper. He's also a cat who has hundreds of millions of dollars. He's a businessman. So stop that. He's just a rapper because that sounds really, really ignorant after he's been in the game 35 years at least. But the program he had was constructed by two very smart men who are economists. So what we got was just wait until after the election. And after the election, we got, man, leave me alone. So Joe Biden wouldn't sit down with Ice Cube, but he sat down with Cardi B, a filthy, retarded prostitute who admitted to drugging and robbing people. So you could sit down with her, but not a man who said, hey, I got some things I want to talk about that'll benefit black people. And that couldn't be achieved if it were not for the elite who continues to pretend that they're in charge and that they're doing something and bringing something good to black people. That's a problem.
Well,
So
it's a problem, but it's also it's a way of life. I mean, when we, it occurred to me, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago. I guess it's been about that long. When did Cosby have his famous conversation about black people
he,
and us not holding, us poor
it's,
black people not holding up.
it's been about 20 years.
It's been about 20 years. So,
Yeah,
the
been 20.
interesting thing about, those kinds of conversations is that, he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was in a room full of other very rich, black people. Like this was not even a conversation that
People.
he was, yeah, he was having with us. But then people could argue, do you, you know, do you kill, if you don't like the messenger, but he's delivering something, do you just, throw the message and the messenger out? Because I'm not suggesting that there weren't some valid points in his conversation. But this is what I will say about that conversation, and maybe not so much the conversation, but this idea of, elite black people and how they are, and their relationship to the rest of us or the masses of black people. They don't make their money. They don't secure their bag unless it's off of our backs. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And there's nothing that you can point to that says otherwise. I mean, if we're looking at music, the things that that they're selling to us, if you look at the things, not just that they're selling to us, but the music that's being celebrated, right?
Yeah,
Because you have, I mean, we could name a whole bunch of black people out here that need to be continuously honored and celebrated for their music, but they're not.
right.
So it's like, what do we celebrate? What do we put out in front? And it's always some degeneracy. And so then we look,
Absolutely.
and because, and so basically what has occurred is just this robbing of black culture. And it
Yeah,
is this thing that is so degenerate. But when you look at who's pushing out these messages and who they're pushing it out to, whether it's through music, whether it's through clothing, whether it's through policy or institutions, they're always targeting, we want to the young people, we gotta, and so it's like, well, why are you reaching? You want to abandon them, you want to blame everything on them, but then you keep feeding them garbage. And then you say, well, what's, that they're the
Well,
problem. What and 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 the truth of the matter is, and I think this is one of the things that's really indicative of how much we are in crisis, and that is movements have historically in our community been led by young people. And so moving us to the
yeah,
next, and so we've neglected, and also the thing that's always happened is we've had very deliberate intergenerational work. So
yes,
we don't see that anymore. I mean, I was teasing my daughter. I bought her a sewing machine and some cooking ware, specifically for her because her paternal grandmother and aunt are extremely good cooks and seamstresses. And I
nice,
said, you're going to learn that. I can't teach that to you, but you need to learn that. And so on a very, sort of personal level, like that's the kind of intergenerational work. Like we would pass on things. So whether it is, this idea of organizing, like as an organizer, I've taken my children everywhere with me. So whether it was through organizing, whether it was some sort of trade or skill or something, there's been
yeah,
this intergenerational work where we have been teaching them and we have been preparing them. Because if that didn't happen, there is no way that the young people who were in SNCC could have gone throughout the South to do what they did.
right,
And especially when
right,
you talk about who came out of SNCC, right? Like it, and so to look up and not have our institutions, right, do that
yeah,
intergenerational work. um we look up and they keep recycling the same leadership.
the
And
same people,
I'm not even suggesting that as more seasoned veteran people that we don't have anything to offer, because I certainly don't wouldn't want to be considered as useless, or just because I'm now over 50. But there's a time and a place for everything, and we have to be able to
well,
understand.
but but yeah, but here's a question that I would ask of myself, just as I would ask of you and anyone else who is in our generation. Would you be okay with not being a leader, not being out front, and being an advisor? Because
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
it used to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I,
yeah,
I just want that
absolutely.
clarity
Oh,
because
yeah, I don't if I'm too
if we go
old to
back in,
lead. Oh, let's be real clear. That stuff, oh, that is meant for young people. That
well,
being
see,
out front
and
and
and and we
moving
should be
things.
focused. Yes, we should be focused because we have to remember Malcolm and Martin. Neither one of them, and of course we include SNCC and Cord and Black Panthers. These weren't people who just said, "I'm in here, let me have this." People sought them out, put
Yes.
them in place, and gave
Mentored
them the
them.
tool.
Yes,
But what we're
absolutely.
looking at now, which is why I get so angry at these gray faced people who want to, denigrate young people. Right after the civil rights movement, that generation held on, and I've been done, and up in the stage on the he's done. Hey, here's the next whoever, and put them up. I mean, and it's America. We say America eats its young, and this is what we mean. They want to use the young for everything to put them out front, either it's sending them to war or testing them with this, but then they want to hold on to everything. And that's why we don't have any leadership. I mean, like the Democratic Party, an 80-year-old cat. He's 80. What is he? 80. He's about to turn 81. 80, that's the best you got. And that tragic mulatto that's his VP, that's it. That's a problem. And so it's not just the black community, but we're doing it and we just can't afford it. Like America's doing it and they're losing, they're in trouble because they don't have any young energy, but we're the ones who are in trouble. There's no one to really stomp out there and advocate. And then it gets bad too, Denise, when you see young people trying to find their way and the old gray faced morons start trying to stomp them out. So, for example, during the quarantine, when the young people decided to get out and they were, tearing stuff up, they were mad, and they weren't going to take it and they wanted people to know. And you had all these gray faced fools. Oh man, these young people tearing stuff up. They need to sit down. They tearing up their own community. First off, it's not their community. They don't own any of that. Let's start there. Secondly, it wasn't just young black people. They had allies who were out there too, but we don't see that. We're so anxious to disparage young people. Now I want to go directly, and then we can go full circle. I want to go directly to someone we had talked about who I really have come to despise, and that's well, I'm gonna say his government name, uh, Jermaine Shoemake. That is the government name of Umar Johnson. Now, I don't know why this Negro changed his name. And, the Umar part, I get it. A lot of black people will change their name to Muslim names when they become Muslim. He's not Muslim. So Umar, I didn't make any sense. But Johnson is really wacky. This dude is real wacky. But he recently said something that really made me. I'm glad he wasn't in front of me when he said it because I would have fought it. He said basically that black men have to take over the community. Okay, you have a plan, Umar? You don't? Okay, shut up. But he said black men have to take over the community. And his suggestion was that in order to do it, we have to put young people to sleep. He literally said we have to put them to sleep for good. He was like animated, celebrating killing our babies. I'm like, dude, if they're out there on the street, now, I'm gonna say this, and I would say this to his bitch face. Dude, I've done gang intervention, so I've been on the street, I've, worked with juveniles, I've worked in group homes. I've stood between young brothers who were trying to do each other in and used my body and wits to keep them from doing that. And I would do it again, even at this age. But for him to call on black men to go and kill black children, I hope those black. Oh, no, I can't say that. You know what I was going to
Um,
say, though.
yeah. Well, okay. So well, for one thing, okay. So I think just to be able to give, your our listeners the context of, so there was a video, right, that he was referencing that had some young black men, and they were hanging around, it looks like on a, residential street. They had guns, and then they looked as if they were not up to, doing any community work. Let's just say that.
Right, right,
So,
right.
and so he was commenting about these young men. We have, this is what we have to rid our neighborhoods or our community of. And he said, some of them are just too far gone. And
Yeah.
but here's, and that actually may be true, because we have been so neglectful
Yes.
in our parenting, and we have seen the the destruction of the black family. And so we know that a lot of our children do not live in households where they have their mother and father, and even more so than that, not necessarily just living in a two-parent household, but they may not even have contact with their father
Right.
for whatever reasons. And we understand, because then we don't want to get into a different topic, but we understand that a lot of this is driven by single Black mothers and how they are doing doing things that do not support co-parenting.
Yes.
So not to get off on that
That's
subject.
a whole nother show.
That's a
Got you,
whole
sir.
nother show.
Yeah.
So there are, like I said, we said earlier, that you have these young people who are out here raising themselves. Um,
Pretty much.
but what was so bothersome about what he was preaching is that he said, I can't psychologize them out of that, or whatever term he
As
was
though he
making
would
up.
even try. Yeah.
But but why is it, just in general, why is it so easy for us to give up on Black children,
Specifically
and
black boy.
specifically Black boys,
Yeah. Just throw
um,
them.
and just throw them away? And so that was the part that just, when you see the video, you kind of shake your head and go, okay, I'm confused. Like, why is it so easy for us as Black people to say that, to advocate that we're just going to get rid of, like, Black boys are just that expendable, we don't even have to try? Like, we've talked about this before. I have a leave no one behind policy, right? And we're going to take everybody with us. And then the elders, the ones that have been problematic, the elders going to deal with them. And then you kind of told me a while ago that we are kind of like the elders now. So now I got to
It's
rethink that.
us. It's
I got,
us. We
I
are
got
them.
I gotta kind of rethink that, because it's just some folks out here that I don't want to deal with. And I don't I'm not talking about young people. I'm talking about grown Black folks. It's like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? And
Well,
so
yeah.
it's just, it's Black boys are expendable. Like, you mean to tell me there's, even if you thought that, and again, there are some young people that are just so, God help them, they are so far gone, but they're not the only ones.
Well, see, and listen. So here's my thing with Umar, and I'll never call that bitch Doctor Umar Johnson. I know he was verified, whatever, but I have so little respect for him that it's
Hmm.
in the negative. But the thing that bothers me, he calls himself Prince of Pan Africanism. There is no Pan Africanism. That's like, what are you doing, Joe? Dude, you
Hmm.
making stuff up. The thing that bothers me is that he hasn't built anything. There is no foundation. In order to say we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, who is we? When he say black, see, he's a poet, because all of this shit is poetry and fairy tales. Black men are going to have to take over the community. Who's doing that? What organization do you have of men who stand at the ready? We're going to get in the streets. We're going to go through these streets and take off. Like, dude, shut up. Stop playing with people.
Well,
Because when you make statements like that, you get people who are emotional thinking that you actually are saying something and you're not. And
well,
that's
you
why, and so it's disturbing to
yeah.
me that then he goes from the fairy tale to something that is very dangerous, saying, let's just put them to sleep.
Yeah, so there are so many like, if we are going to as a community recover, it is going to be through the leadership of Black men. So we know that. That's a given. We also know
Yes.
that without a plan, it's not going to happen. Not because there isn't
That's right.
any will to do it, but because at the very least, there has to be some sort of um, there has to be
Stewardship.
some sort of countering of all of the institutions, all of the forces that are going to get in the way, that have been getting in the way of
Yes.
Black men leading the community. I mean, because there's a reason why it didn't just happen by accident that Black men aren't leading in our communities. Like that was very deliberate. So
Very.
in
Yeah.
order for that to happen, there has to be a plan of how do you neutralize whatever those forces are. And
Yes.
so from our own politicians and public servants, from our own
The
women,
organization.
our
Ooh.
organizations, that
Yes.
so like all of those things, there has to be a plan, and it may even be like one family at a time, one
Well, and, and
family,
and that's okay.
and
But
that's
that's
okay.
that's that's a plan, because something that you and a couple other people have helped me to see, because I'm like, oh yeah, all these organizations, just throw them away, let's start over. No, let's take them over. Right? Let's put some young people in place. So those are things that are very, very real, very, very doable. And I'm gonna also say this, just to make my position clear. You said it, and I agree. I do think there are a lot of people who are too far gone. And at some point, maybe it makes sense to shun them or leave them alone, whatever. But look, I used to be super, super radical. Maybe at some point, maybe some of them got to go to sleep. You know what I mean? If they're out there shooting and killing, I don't know. But to say that as the plan, to put them to sleep, it may be. I'm just gonna be real. I hate him now,
And if that's
because
your I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no.
I was gonna Yeah, I was gonna say, and if
Go ahead,
that's
you
your
got it.
starting point, if that's your
Yes,
starting point,
yes. You're starting at let's kill these kids.
you
That
know you
I
didn't
receive him.
say
I receive him as a white supremacist now.
let's go over and you know where you know what he did. He set out um the road of least resistance.
Yes. Yep.
That's what he set out.
That's what he
Um
did.
that's not a warrior spirit. That's not
Well,
revolutionary.
he's neither a warrior nor a revolutionary,
Yeah.
because he says stuff that sounds good, but he has no plan. I mean, look, can you? I'm a journalist, so I want to do books, documentaries. One documentary I started on, I'm going to finish it. I want to deliver products that will edify our community. I am okay with organizing, so that we can start and I'll pick a community, maybe Chicago. I don't know about LA, but you pick a community, you organize where you can actually give people options that want options. It's funny. One of my frat brothers, Tracy Powell, we talk about this all the time, and we say some really radical stuff. And for all the bluster and crazy shit that he says, because he's worked up and he's emotional, he's also out there. I mean, this cat is like training young Black men and women to code. Like he's a revolutionary for all the crazy shit he says. So when he says something crazy, I'm with you, but I also know that he's active. And so that's why it bothers me with this Umar, Jermaine, whatever that boy's name is. It bothers me that he has no plan, took people's money, and with school, is the school open yet? Who's going to that school? So he took people's money, didn't do anything. He literally goes on YouTube. Yeah, you want this knowledge? I'm gonna need you to hit the cash app. Hit the cash app. Prince Brown Gamble. Hit the cash app. Now I want to hit him in his mouth. So when we start talking about who the problem is, it's some of us first and foremost. So I just wanted to call him out because he said some really well. The other real quick before we move on, he said that was really reckless that hit me because I'm a single black man. He said that every single black man needs to go marry a single mother. And it sounds good. Again, he's a poet. So that's poetry, that's a fairy tale, but it's ignorant because number one, not all of these single mothers are fit. Some of them, I've dated some of them. Some of them are a problem. They are raising problems in their home. And so to tell men, just step into that, that's not the answer. Mentorship, I'm with you. But to create or try to create a family based on poetry is really irresponsible. Also, how come he didn't say you single sisters need to go marry some of these single fathers? Boom. You dig me? So it's just he's pandering him and Boyce Watkins. They're pandering to black women, and that's a problem because if what Umar said is correct, if he's real and he's going to do this and join and create some kind of organization or a movement, and black men are going to take over the community, black women aren't going to like it because it means they won't get what they want. They won't get what they're asking for. They won't get to just keep doing what they're doing and get approval, and it's going to be ugly. So to say we have to take over the community and then immediately say, yeah, and kill their kids. And as the father of a teenager, like, dude, to say that makes me want to harm you because I know I've seen, some of my son's friends that we got some good kids out there. So to say, yeah, we're just gonna have to put them to sleep, like, and so it's the elitist, to go back to the macro now that I'm kind of done with him. But to go back to the macro, too many of us have this elitist, aloof attitude and approach to our own people, which is making things worse, not better. Worse, not better. And if we're gonna get out of the quagmire that we're in, it's gonna require for us to look back and do some of the things that we've already done. B, it's gonna require us, man, and this is weird because I never would have said this when I was young and radical, but I'm with Dr. King now. It's gonna require more love. Now I know he was talking about loving our enemy. I'm not there yet. They can go to hell. But the enemy within. And when I say love, the first thing that's going to have to happen is that black men and women have to figure out how to love each other
So
because that foundation.
that that
Go
should
ahead,
have
sis.
been that, if he was gonna okay, first of all, if he was gonna talk about like this idea of neutralizing, a problematic um group within our community, he should have started with Black elite. But in
Yes,
general, in terms of taking over the community, taking back our community, he should have started with Black women. He should have
yes,
started with Black men. We are, well, y'all are, y'all are going to have to, we are, as a collective, we are going to have to come together, and we are
yes.
going to have to figure this thing out. And if we have to do some weeding out, some
That's right.
screening,
That's
then
right.
we can do that. But it's got to be done because we it sounds cliche-ish and everything, and maybe it is, but it's the truth. We ain't gonna get out of this without each other. So
We're not.
I
We're
it's
not.
just it's
And
just
so,
not gonna
yeah,
happen. And and I'm with you. I'm really, we're probably being a little redundant here, but I think it bears repeating. I think that
that's fine.
if you're as a so-called leader, if your first strategy to the war is to, like I said, go the road of least resistance to directly to your young people. That speaks either volumes about you as a leader, or and it may even be a commentary about where we are and how much we're in crisis. That would be the first, like, you don't even consider, well, why are young people hanging out on the streets? Why do they have
Yeah,
guns? They don't
right,
manufacture guns. There are places they could be, like school, but we got police in schools that treat them like criminals, and then we got white women teaching them, and who treat them like criminals, or actually they treat them like they're
right.
subhuman. So, like, did you,
Absolutely.
like, think about, let's take over our schools. Let's take over our schools so that our black children, especially our black boys, can feel safe, can
Yeah.
feel valued, like, because that's not what's happening with black boys in schools, in public schools. So, I mean, there were just so many different conversations that he could have
That
had.
could have had before going to let's put the children to sleep. It's complex, but I think if we start with the strategies that are accessible, if we start with, like, for me, we start with black love, understanding our relationships, understanding what went wrong, and creating a timeline so that we know these are the things that went wrong. Let's undo these things. Let's look at the things that people are saying and let's counter them. I think all of these podcasts where people are like, well, the reason why men are doing it, they gay. Well, these women, they just, like, all of that is theatrical. These people are making
It's not
money,
helping.
but it's not helping. And so what I want to do, which is what I was doing before I became a father, I want to be able to, I'm going to release a new book and a documentary and go on the lecture circuit and actually start introducing real data. This is what we're doing, this, because you see people just throw out, especially black women, and I get it, for some of them, why, because it's all trauma, ain't none of it reality based. When they, because as soon as you disagree with a black woman, oh, you gay, you like white women, you've been to prison. Yeah, baby, none of that applies. Now what? But so if we deal with what reality is now, what reality has been, then we have to push it in people's face and say, these are the things, these are the options. Anything else is not productive. These are the things that are productive. Let's start to, and I think more black women will then follow black men who are leading, or perhaps black men who are leading got to hook up with black women and lead together.
I actually
Okay.
think, I mean, there are a lot of people out here who are, advocating on behalf um, of black men, as they should. And then there are a lot out here that I think, and I'm entitled to any of your listeners. I'm entitled to my opinion. Thank you very much. I think some of them are doing
Well,
more harm, and because I think it's one thing to advocate for black men and to really um, help us as a community see where we have collectively not just abandoned black men, but we have really sacrificed black men, right?
and black boys.
And black boys, right? Black boys and black men. So I mean, so it's bad. And so we can talk about that. We should talk about that. We should advocate for um anything that helps us to put a stop to that. We really, and part of it is reclaiming all of these, or not reclaiming, but really shooting down all of these narratives that essentially say that black men and black boys are inherently violent and have no value.
Yes.
I think it's a whole other thing when in saying that, um, that the rest of the message becomes something that's disparaging, Black women. And so it's like we understand that we are in crisis. We understand that as Black women, we have done some really unforgivable. Well, I shouldn't say unforgivable. Let me not say that.
Yes, some of it's unforgivable.
Let me
Not
because
all black women,
and I'm
but
gonna
some
say
stuff is
and
unforgivable.
and the reason I'm not gonna say unforgivable is because we actually have to do some forgiving in order we have to do some forgiving of Black women in order for us to move forward. So I don't want to say
Sure,
unforgivable.
sure, sure. No, I'm
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
But
So
some things are unforgivable, like the constant fight over children.
oh
Some of that,
well I
some
think
of that's
yeah
unforgivable.
I think yeah, I mean, I think that there's some things that are just dirty.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
they're horrific.
yes.
And
Those
but
things are
yeah,
problematic.
but it's like, so that's why I didn't want to use the word unforgivable, because we do have to get
I
to,
I get it. No, I'm a
yeah.
rock with you. I'm a
Yeah,
rock with you.
but one of the things that I want to say about all of these conversations is that if we start to look at every Black woman that opens her mouth, and I had this conversation today because somebody on Facebook decided they wanted to chastise me about a comment, which I thought it was very weird to have somebody who you don't know people on Facebook, so it doesn't, but it was very strange to have someone just say, I made a comment and they were saying, "Stop deflecting. You know that's not the point or whatever, and stop deflecting." And then there's like this exclamation point. And so I had to then explain myself. But the other thing that was more important to me is, like, every Black, don't like, we got to get out of that space, because in the same vein that Black women have for now decades looked at every Black man like he's the enemy, like, we don't need that. I don't think it's
To
going to help
reverse.
us if in the reverse. So
When
the
I agree. That's why I said I'm a
yeah,
rock with you. You know,
yeah.
there's one of my good friends. She used to work for me, Lita Haynes. She said something a couple of weeks ago. I usually bristle at when people say not all, not all, but she's a sweetheart. And she said, I can't remember the comment, but
Mhm.
basically it made sense to me. And I was like, okay, you're right. Not all. Let me read something from my brother.
Okay.
Preston said, the Black elite continues to focus on the talented 10th and leave the others behind. I believe all young Black boys and Black men need mentorship and real leadership.
Oh, that's the
Boom.
truth. That's the truth.
Boom.
I
That's the
mean,
absolute truth.
yeah. And the thing about the mentorship that that Black girls often receive, right? Um, and I'm not saying that, that Black girls should not be mentored,
Right.
but I feel like the things that our mentorships are focusing on is this idea of us surpassing Black boys or Black men. And it just doesn't seem like it's a full circle moment or effort where the idea is you have this opportunity, or you're being mentored in this way, or you're being, led down this path for the benefit of the collective. It's like, for the benefit of Black womanhood. Well, what in the world does that mean exactly?
Right.
I'm puzzled by that.
Yeah.
So, I see that so often. Um and it's bothersome, for lack
Yeah.
of a better word.
Well, and I think if we get to the point where Black men are going to decide to take the community back, they're going to take the community back and still work with Black women. I think this concept of being hostile towards Black women is problematic. I think if we And it's not even that we need to go and do something really, radical and violent. Just stand up and lead, god damn it. And a lot of people will follow. I mean, and the thing that Preston said about mentorship and real leadership, I think that that's profound because I've run mentoring organizations. One I ran that I watched two females, I'm about to call them something else, ruin because the one chick, she got the grant and it was her program. She brought me in as mentor director, and I recruited all of these men and was matching them up, and we were doing an event where it was just men and boys. And her and this heifer, these heifers come up and busting in. I don't care. We gonna see what y'all doing. And so some of the young men and grown men were upset because this was supposed to be a man only space. So mentorship is going to have to occur from man to man, man to boy. We gotta, all these women who keep saying that they're gonna do this, that, and the third, you can facilitate it. Get your grant. Then let us step in and let us do our thing. Or just get out of the way because some of us do need to do it. And I chastise a fraternity and sororities, and I'm a member of the first one, Alpha Phi Alpha. And look, these organizations are doing some good work, just not the same good work that they used to and that should be done. So I'm not going to just, that's why, I'm glad that I've gotten to the point where I know you can't just uh, throw them away. Preston said he agrees with you, Denise. The females are focused on surpassing black men. And that's a problem. You can't, these ladies are out here. Oh yeah, black men need to lead. I need a man who's going to lead me. But then you talk about how far ahead you are. Let's be clear. And this is why I want to do a database. Black women think that they're surpassing someone. You are the most educated group in America. It's beautiful. You are also leading in student loan debt.
We're leading in student loan debt. We are
Credit
leading in
card
being
debt.
alone. So it's, this idea of, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm really not guess. I'm very blessed to have been raised by the women that I was raised by. Um, and so, this idea of trying to surpass men, I mean, it was just never a concern of mine. Not
Yeah.
in terms of, not because I didn't find myself worthy. It that wasn't how I found value in
Yes.
myself. And I'm not even sure why it has to be a competition
It
with us,
shouldn't be.
because there really shouldn't be. I asked some sisters. I think I just made a post, with all of these programs where black women are entrepreneurs, and they're getting support to be entrepreneurs and all of these things, and it's women, and it's always women only. And I asked them, I was like, so you're sitting in a room with all these other women, everybody's getting support to become this wonderful entrepreneur, like, well, doesn't it bother you that potentially your man isn't getting support to be an entrepreneur? Like, do we not think about those kinds of things? And
Well, I don't think they do because they aspire to either remain elite as a part of a family legacy or to become elite, and that's part of what the elite do. They leave other people behind. And so the problem for black women, when you start saying crazy stuff like I need a provider, protector, leader, but then you also say, oh yeah, but I'm so far ahead, most of these men are beneath me, you sound
Mhm.
psychotic. It's
it's
like listening to a snake bark. Like you right? Like
that was a good
you
one.
You went, thank you. It's like you make no sense. And we are not going to be about the business of nation building when we have the woman who wants to be protected, nurtured, and led, basically saying that she's leading. So these are the discussions that we have to have, that I want to hold in the public marketplace when I go back out on the lecture circuit, as opposed to, well, black men are her and black women are her, and then all of this bullshit poetry, like some dude with a funny hairstyle. He had dreads, but they started back here. Then he had a low collision up here. A little shiny, pretty face and sparkly lips, and he's talking about, yeah, because the manhood. And I'm like, no, homeboy, that's this ain't for you. Why are we using poetry? These people are talking crazy shit. Like, when I hear these phrases, this is when I know a bullshit is close behind. I need a man to provide for me so that I can rest in my femininity. You sound retarded. You got to be feminine. Well, You can say I'm masculine, but I've had to take care of my own. What? Because you pay your own bills, that makes you masculine? Or men who are saying that they want to, they need to be able to rest in their masculinity. I'm like, stop all that poetic bullshit.
There is no
Men be
way.
men, women be women.
I'm trying to tell you, there is no way that if a man told me that he needed some incentive to rest in his masculinity, I'm going the other way. And I would
Right.
advise any man
To
that
do the
if a
same with
sister
women.
tells you that she needs some incentive to rest in her femininity, that you go the other way as well,
Right.
because
Because
that doesn't make any
right,
sense.
it's poetry and bullshit. And so what has to happen is that we have to start out here, not here. So when we start talking about starting here, if you're communicating with the elite, if you're communicating with people who have resources, they have access, to, finance, man, the hell with them people. They're going to be all right. We don't need to really do. And I think that's the problem. We continue to pour resources like laterally, right? Instead of pouring them down to rise people up. And it's not that complicated. I think that we can, Marcus Garvey, rise up, you mighty nation. I think the mighty nation can rise by looking at those on the bottom and bringing them up, right? I think if we start with the younger generations that these old gray-faced pieces of trash love to disparage, and bring them up, I think we'll be fine. I think if we start talking to each other in pragmatic ways, like the ways in which I speak to women, when I'm trying to edify, they still don't like it, but a lot of them can receive it, because it's not about you ain't shit. It's about you're doing wrong. Here's what you should do. You don't have to do it. But if in fact you're trying to create something with a man, right? And I say
Right.
this, and I have the same approach with men. I think the elitist approach is always you ain't shit. And we hear it with poor people. We hear poor people, oh, get your money up. That's why you ain't got no Jordans. Get your money up. I'm like, get your money up. You live in a little dirty apartment with dirty stuff. You just got some new clothes. Like, the elitist attitude has finally, and I saw it in the 90s, has finally permeated our lower economic strata. Preston said, that's my point, Darryl. We need to touch those who do not get the support because of their status. Exactly. And I blame a lot of these, in addition to the elite, in politics and in our so-called social organizations. I blame a lot of these entertainers. That's why I was so angry in the 90s with Puffy. He was one of the leaders of just taking materialism and making it part of our culture and making it popular, so that you had, people who literally have nothing, pretending to have everything, which means they never can, because you can't achieve it if you're acting like you already have it, which is different from fake it till you make it. This is fake it, and therefore you will not make it. And we have that with lots. So I see a lot of sisters who are demanding, oh, I need a man who's, he's got to make at least 100,000, and she's probably making about 40. And these dum dums don't even understand. Less than 15% of America makes six figures. Less than 5% of African Americans make six figures. So
We've
the
been
math ain't math.
sold. It's not mathing, and we've been sold some really you can't even call it fantasy. I mean, because it's some nightmarish um crap. But this idea of what we want people to make, and like and then even if that's what you want, do you even know why you want it? Do you even know what it's supposed to do?
Do
Like
you know what to do with it?
with it, like we don't we
No.
I mean, it's just something we hear, like, oh, we want somebody, it sounds good. And the thing is that that's what's being sold to us. That's what we are being told, that and through various messages, through propaganda, through advertising, and all of these things, that how we are supposed to define ourselves. And we are not exercising any say in how we define ourselves. And that's the really, and that's such a sad thing to me, that
Yes.
we are relying on people who have, like I said, really um advanced themselves personally, and and systematically in their circles and networks, um off of us.
Yeah.
And we gotta be able to, as the masses of us, we have to be able to understand that that's exactly what's happening. But they're clever. They're clever.
Very.
They convince us that they're making moves, that they're playing chess, not checkers, and those kinds of things.
It's chess, not checkers. And they say that about big dummies like Jay-Z. And these people have never talked to these people, so they don't even know. Well, I don't wasn't friends with Jay-Z, but I knew him. I talked to him. He's not that goddamn smart. These people have handlers. Kanye is a retard. This cat tells you I don't read, but you call him a genius. You know, these people aren't playing chess or checkers. They're playing tiddlywinks, and they don't even have a rule book. So we got to stop looking up to a lot of people and start looking laterally. Let's start talking about, as I'm looking at my brother's comment, he says, I still touch and mentor those black folks who others have written off. This is done outside of any organization. Yes. So there are a lot of us who do that, who are mentoring, who are trying to show people uh, the way. I've found out and jumped into a whole methodology for creating corporate credit, right? And I've helped a lot of people, and some people won't do it because, oh, it's a scam. Hey, this Negro, you don't own no bank. What you talk? You know what I mean? But I try to do it and put what I have, the knowledge I have, because really, I'm gonna be honest, this is white territory that I stepped in and fell into. And I think we have to get into a sharing of resources. We have to get back to being the communal people that we have always been. Because Black people, Africans, we're a communal people by nature. And so a lot of the crazy shit that we're doing and seeing now is counter to our actual nature, right? But when you take the enemy's garb and you put it around you, it doesn't make you the enemy. It just makes you a damn fool.
I really like what you and your brother said about this mentoring and the sharing of resources, because I actually think that we are in such crisis. I actually don't think that we can do it through institutions, because our institutions, they don't belong to us anymore. They don't work for us anymore.
They're corrupt.
They're corrupt. And I don't think that we have, I think maybe, you know, 20, 30 years ago, maybe we could have started to do that, reclaim them. But I think that, we have so many things that are happening, and we're further into this reality where there is such a disconnect between black men and black women. So with that being so urgent, we don't have the time or the luxury or the energy, um to put into trying to reclaim these institutions. And so I think that the kinds of things that you're talking about, reaching, if it's one family at a time, one block at a time. And the thing about that kind of connections, that kind of mentoring, is that what we want to do is to make sure that it's sustainable, right?
Right.
Like you
Right.
do it in such a way that it is sustainable. And so it may sound like something, okay, we're not making as much of an impact because it's one family or it's one group at a time. But when it's sustainable, then it has far-reaching tentacles. And so I love that idea. I love the idea,
Yeah.
because I think that's, it's like with Black Republic Media. We don't have time to try to figure out how to get into Black media, because there ain't no Black media. We don't have time to go
Right.
into it, or try to go into some, white, because they, first of all, they don't want us.
That's right.
If you're there to tell the truth, they don't
They don't
want
want
you.
it.
So
Yeah, the
just
black ones don't either. But
right.
let me say this though, as far as the institutions, I think, and not just because I'm a frat boy, I do think the fraternities and sororities, they're already doing it. They never
Oh
stop.
yeah.
I think the institutions like the Useless League, the
Oh
you
yeah,
know
no,
the
because those, I mean, because those were never completely ours in the first place,
right
right? We had to make some concessions, even
from its
to
very foundation,
from
the
the very
NAACP
foundation.
was
Yeah.
not at ours.
Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, those are the institutions I mean, because they were never completely ours, and we had to make some concessions, as you said, from the foundation. But certainly our fraternities and sororities, like you said, are doing the work, and can
and
be
and, and,
supported
and I
and
got
can be guided and supported to
yes,
go
yes,
where we need them to go. Because I think that's also part of it, is that we are not doing a real read and a real pulse check on where we really are. Because if you are basing your read on the masses of Black people, on where you are, that's a you are totally missed the mark.
that's right. Well, so I
Totally missed the mark.
yeah, and the only other thing I wanted to say about fraternities and sororities, the AKA has just started a credit union. So I'm
Mhm.
just like, if we can build on that, other organizations, and then present that, because that's the case of an institution challenging institutions that exist,
Mhm.
because the black banks as is, I'm not dealing with that. But I would take a look at this credit union. It's probably going to be private membership initially, but hopefully they'll let some of the frat brothers in. But I would take a look at that, because those are institutions that we should have had. We did have banks. We had black banks, but
Right.
those people who had those banks were basically just looking for the bag and taking the money and running. I mean, who was it? Killer Mike, who had all these black people switching their money over to black banks. Nothing happened. People weren't getting credit cards. They weren't getting loans. You know, nothing happened. And so we have to start. Who was it? I hate to quote him, Booker T. Washington, but we got to cast our buckets down where we are, you know. And these are the things that my brother and I do that a lot of people we know
Well,
uh, are doing, and we need to start there and magnify that before we just like Jermaine says, just put them to sleep. That's so psychotic.
it
That's
it it,
that's
it
so
really
psychotic.
is. It really is. And so I'm with you. I think, we have I don't want to sound, all religious or anything like that, but
It's
I
okay.
do believe in a higher power. And
Yeah,
I do believe that, we have been given the tools that we need. Um, I think that we have to stop living the value system that
that
is
was
of the
given to us.
European. Yeah. And I think that
Yeah,
we will, that word communal is huge. That
yeah,
word communal is huge, and really understanding
absolutely.
what that
And
means.
right, and we have to make that mean something first and foremost in our relationships, love relationships, business relationships. We've got to go communal again. We gotta, we got, like Malcolm X said, we got to see the God within each other. We have to learn to love
Ooh,
each other so that we can build up our community. We have to see ourselves in each other, right? And
well,
then we can
yeah,
work with each other as each other.
right. Because what we see often, when you were talking about earlier about people thinking, oh, it's a scam, is because we have been so inundated with this idea that Black people are not trustworthy, that
Mm-hmm.
Black people have no integrity, right? And
Yeah,
I'm always fascinated by how the mind games have worked, because if you just look at the country, the nation that we live in, and you understand how it was erected, right? I'm using that word deliberately. The infrastructure, out the culture that is, considered American culture, that's all us.
absolutely.
That's all
Ooh.
us.
Yeah.
Everything is us. You look at how many patents Black men.
Whoo. I mean, the fact that the stock market was created, we were the original stock. Come on. There's so much. And so that's where I come in as a journalist. It's funny when I was doing my syndicated column, whenever I would say something about what we need to do, people were like, well, what are you going to do? I'm a journalist. I'm not going to do everything. I'm not even going to try. But the things I can do to organize, I'm going to do that. But primarily, my goal is to disseminate information.
and
It's
and
what we're doing now.
and actually, I think that um maybe I might be biased about this, but I believe that the one thing that a community or civilization cannot go without is a journalist.
Absolutely. No, you're
You
right.
can you
And
can
that's why we're in trouble though, because the
we
fourth
don't
estate is almost non-existent
we
in the
don't
black community.
We're not telling our stories. We're not telling our truths. We're not investigating our problems because we've been told we don't have problems, or if the problems that we do have, somehow they're our fault. So, a lot of gaslighting, with the elite. And let me just say this, because I know we're going to wrap up soon. But
Yeah.
the a problem, or maybe not a problem, a hallmark, right, of the elite And I was kind of getting to this a little bit earlier when we were, trying to sort of define the elite. We're not just talking about, okay, educated Black people or Black people who have a lot of money. No, the hallmark of the Black elite is that they parrot what white supremacy says and does. And
Yes.
and and their intended audience is the rest of us, the
Yep.
masses of Black people. So let I wanted to be really, really clear about that, is that when we're talking about the Black elite, we're essentially talking about those who have decided to undergo employment with white supremacy,
Yes.
and then they turn us over, like
Yeah, that's right. And that, and that's happening on a regular basis. So I do want to wrap up. I'd like for you to give me your closing thoughts, and then I'll do mine. Or would you like me to go first, soldier sister?
no, no, I'll go first, and
Okay.
you have the definitive word on this. Um the path of least resistance is not the path of a warrior or revolutionary. And if we are looking at our young people, who, if by all accounts are having so many challenges, um, we see some, creating havoc in our communities, and etc. But if our solution to correcting what's going on in our community is to, you know, in the word, using, Dr. Umar's words, to put them to sleep, then we have a real problem, and we have to, as a civilization, meaning Black folks, we got to ask ourselves, what in the world Kool-Aid did we drink?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's nobody does that other than Europeans. So
Mhm.
you can't go anywhere else on the planet where they disrespect um the young people and disregard them, um, except
Throw them
with
away.
Europeans. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. So I and this show is indicative uh, of where I'm going as far as my transition to trying to really, really reach out to my own people, especially Black women, to deal with, Black love, because that's the only thing that's going to save us, not just, loving relationships, but friendships, family relationships. We're so off base, and it's going to take us, Black men and women, to really put us back together. So, a lot of people are going to get angry with me, and I'll probably get angry with them too, because they want so much to happen. But I am pretty focused. My primary goal in putting forth the information that I'm about to, as far as the books and the documentaries and my films, is all about magnifying Black love. Because I think if we don't start there, we can't really get any place. I think Black women, a lot of Black women are so out of hand because Black men have just allowed things to just go along, this whole laissez-faire situation. And we got to stand up and be men now. And it's got nothing to do with how old you are. It's got nothing to do with gay, straight, whatever. We're gonna leave them trans people out of it though. But it has to do with standing up, being men, having a backbone, being consistent, so that we can actually show that we can do something different. And so, I'm really, and I'm gonna have to go back and start reading more Dr. King, so that I can, find that mission that will drive me, at least dealing with Black women, where love is a better approach than hate or anger or anything else. Because man, we are in bad shape, and those are the ways in which Black men can lead, not Umar Johnson, that filthy bitch. I had to get one in.
you
Uh,
have to get one in. Okay.
yeah, I mean, but for he's evil. He is a devil. He's a demon. to think that a black revolution begins with putting children to sleep. That's elitist and that is psychotic, and it is the opposite of Pan Africanism. It is the opposite of being an actual black revolutionary. You do not attack your children. Again, some of them, maybe, even Preston said, he comes across incorrigibles, but, he doesn't give up. Some of them, maybe we can't do a lot for them, but to say that we have to put them to sleep, maybe we should put Umar to sleep. Okay, so anyway, I think we got to covered a lot of ground, and I mean, I'm thinking about it. That's what he called for, putting problematic people to sleep. That would include, and in particular, it would be him. So maybe somebody need to put that dude
Well,
to
yeah.
sleep.
I mean, here's the thing. You go to other countries, you look at South Africa and other places where they are fighting for their liberation. And there is a neutralizing of, forces within.
Yeah.
And the thing is that that's a real conversation. That
Yes.
is a real conversation that
But you
I
don't
don't think,
start there.
but you don't start with your children. Like
You don't
that's
start with putting people to sleep, and you don't
right,
start with children. And I'm
right.
gonna be
You
honest,
don't,
that made me hate him. I already disliked him, but you want to put babies to sleep?
like you just don't, you don't, we don't have, I, I feel like we have not even had enough conversations in our community, because and people will say, we should be beyond the talking, we should be, the thing is that we have been so discouraged in having these really honest conversations about where we are, what's going on,
Who we
how
are,
should, yeah, who we are. Like all of that's been discouraged. You can't even say that you have a problem, because somebody's going to tell you, some elitist black folks are going to tell you, no, you don't really have a problem. What you didn't do is work hard enough, or
right?
you didn't put in the extra time, you didn't do something enough. So we can't
Right.
even have like those honest conversations. And so yeah, before we start to try to neutralize people, let's really understand where we are. And because
Right.
we ain't on the same page about that, because
Yeah.
anytime you have us, I think one of the biggest indicators, as you said, is we're still tagging along with the Democrats.
Woo. That's a problem. That's another show. Hey, so thank everybody. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you, Soldier Sister. We out
Thank
here doing
you,
it. Thank
brother
you.
warrior. Yes, yes, yes. We out here trying. We're trying.
Trying. Yeah, but
Yeah.
in soon and very soon, we'll take it to the next level. And that's going to be a beautiful thing. Take it out into the public. Take it to the streets, like the Doobie Brothers said.
Take it to the streets. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end on James Hadley says, "Save the babies, save the children." Marvin Gaye.
Save the children.
Woo! Indeed. All
Save the
right.
children. All
Thank
right.
you. Peace.
Peace.